Deacon Jim was a ruthless killer, known for his use of shotguns and his bulletproof armor. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next episode. Jim Miller was born in Arkansas, and his family moved to Franklin, Texas when he was 1 year old. Only a few years after the move, Miller's father, who helped build the first Capitol building in Austin, died, and his mother took the family to Event, Texas, to live with her parents. In 1869, when Miller was 8, his grandparents were found murdered in their home. Miller was arrested, but never prosecuted for the crime. Little is known about Jim's teenage years, but in 1884, around the age of 23, he was living on his sister's farm with his widowed mother, where he shot and killed his brother-in-law with a shotgun, while the man was sleeping on his porch. Miller was arrested for the murder, convicted, and sentenced to life in prison. The conviction, however, was overturned on a technicality. After this, Miller left the family farm and became a hired hand on the ranch of Emanuel Clements, a cousin of John Wesley Hardin. Rancher Clements was killed by Marshal Joe Townsend in March of 1887. Marshal Townsend was later ambushed by an assailant wielding a shotgun, which became known as Miller's signature style. The marshal was severely wounded in one arm. He survived, but lost the arm to amputation. During his mid-20s, Jim traveled the Texas-Mexico borderlands, operating a saloon, becoming a deputy sheriff, and also gaining a reputation for killing Mexicans. In 1891, Miller married Sally Clements, daughter of his former boss, rancher Emanuel Clements. Assuming the appearance of a devout Methodist, he earned the nickname Deacon Jim. He was well liked by the townspeople because he was polite and an avid member of the church. Regardless of the weather, he was known to wear a long, black frock coat. It was around this time that Pecos Sheriff George Fraser became interested in Miller's criminal activities. Wasting no time, Sheriff Fraser had Miller jailed on a charge of murder. He was acquitted by a jury, and after this, Fraser also had him arrested for stealing mules. Tension between the two men began to rise, and on April 12, 1894, in Pecos, Miller was confronted by Fraser about his involvement in the murder of cattleman Con Gibson. Fraser didn't wait for Miller to go for his shotgun and shot and wounded him in the right arm. While Miller was attempting to fire, he discharged his gun with his left hand, hitting a bystander. Sheriff Fraser fired again, hitting Miller in the groin, which finally put him down. Fraser emptied his six-shooter into Miller's chest. After Miller's friends had rushed him to a doctor, his frock coat was removed to reveal a large steel plate that Miller wore under it as a kind of bulletproof vest. It had saved his life, and Miller recovered. That same year, the day after Christmas, Miller was standing outside of the blacksmith shop when Fraser began to fire at him. Fraser hit Miller in the arm and leg. Rushing in to finish him off, Fraser tried to shoot Miller in the chest, but the metal plate saved him again. Fraser, demoralized, quickly retreated. Sheriff Fraser lost his bid for re-election and left Texas for New Mexico. A few months later, he returned to the Pecos area to visit his mother. Miller learned Fraser was in the area, and on September 13, 1896, Fraser was at a gambling table. Miller opened the saloon's swinging doors, leveling his shotgun. He shot Fraser, who was dealing, and removed most of his head. Jim must have had a pretty smooth-talking lawyer, because he was acquitted of the crime. 3 weeks after the trial, one of the witnesses who testified against Miller was found murdered by a shotgun blast. And soon the prosecuting district attorney, Judge Stanley, died of a food poisoning in Memphis, Texas. In spite of his criminal background, Miller joined the Texas Rangers and worked in the Memphis, Texas area and also in Hall County. He was known to have killed several men in the course of duty. In 1900, Jim moved his family to Fort Worth, where his wife Sally opened a boarding house. It was at this point in his life where Miller began to advertise as a professional killer, an assassin, charging $150 per murder. Over the next 9 years, Miller was hired to kill many men. But on a cold February in 1909, trouble finally caught up with him. In 1909, several ranchers hired Miller to murder Gus Bobbitt, an Oklahoma cattle rancher and former deputy U.S. Marshal. Miller traveled to Oklahoma, and on February 27th, he set up an ambush, concealing himself near Bobbitt's ranch house. Bobbitt and his hired man, Bob Ferguson, arrived from town in their supply wagons. Miller shot Bobbitt in the side with both barrels from his shotgun. Bobbitt fell from the lead wagon, and Miller hightailed it back to Fort Worth. Bobbitt's wife dashed out to check on her injured husband, and before dying, Bobbitt confirmed that he had been attacked by Miller. The murder was also witnessed by Oscar Peeler, a 19-year-old cowhand who had accepted $50 to lead Miller to Bobbitt. Miller was arrested in Texas by a Texas Ranger and extradited to Oklahoma to stand trial. Miller's luck had finally run out. Early in the morning, April 19th, 1909, the citizens of Ada formed a lynch mob. They dragged the 4 suspects outside to an abandoned livery stable behind the jail. Miller remained stoic, while the other 3 reportedly begged for their lives. Miller made 2 final requests: that his diamond ring be given to his wife, and that he be permitted to wear his black hat while being hanged. Both requests were granted. He also asked to die in his black frock coat, and this request was denied. Miller is reported to have shouted, "Let her rip!" and stepped voluntarily off his box to hang. The bodies of all 4 men were left hanging for several hours, until a photographer could be brought in to record the moment. Jim's body was returned to Fort Worth, where he was buried in Oakwood Cemetery. Thank you so much for watching today. I hope you found some value. Be sure to check my playlists, and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss the next episode. Thank you.